Insider Wire says breaking 1/3 of Washington Post's entire staff team is being laid off. To which I say, only 1/3? Make a video gathering all the most disgusting and despicable articles misrepresenting people they hate. Well, Die Hardware, you're in luck because that's what we're going to do. We got Neon from Clownfish. He says, next headline, 400 journals suddenly let go from the Washington Post. Now, I want you guys to take note of January 15th, 2025. We are now February 4th with the breaking news. So this was about 3 weeks ago. 400 Washington Post journalists tell Jeff Bezos they're deeply alarmed with the paper's direction. More than 400 Washington Post journalists signed and sent a letter to owner Jeff Bezos on Wednesday, saying they are deeply concerned with the paper's leadership as its readership continues to erode and journalistic talent bleeds out. Neon called it. CNBC. Washington Post begins widespread layoffs, sharply shrinking storied newspapers' reach. Oh, you love to hear it. Washington Post began widespread layoffs on Wednesday that will drastically shrink the size of the storied newspaper, affecting all departments. And they call it a storied newspaper because these are buddies behind the scenes, CNBC, Jeff Bezos too. I can't remember who owns CNBC, but it's like 3 companies that run all these medias, affecting all departments, according to a recording of the call shared with Reuters. Executive editor Matt Murray informed the staff of the cuts, which will cut across the international editing, metro, and sports desks, and come just days after the more than 145-year-old newspaper scaled back its coverage of the 2026 Winter Olympics amid mounting financial losses. Quote, for too long, we've operated with a structure that's too rooted in the days where we were a quasi-monopoly local newspaper, Murray said on the call, adding that we need a new way forward and a sounder foundation. How about, I know, wild thought here, how about hiring people that connect with your audience? How about being honest and transparent and giving both sides to a story? How about not manipulating headlines to say one thing when the opposite thing actually happened? How about just start there and see where it leads you? You might be a little bit surprised. One Post reporter, speaking on condition of anonymity, called it a bloodbath. The impacted journalists include Amazon beat reporter Caroline O'Donovan, Cairo bureau chief Claire Parker, and the rest of the Post's Middle East correspondents and editors, according to ex-posts from Donovan and Parker. Quote, the Washington Post is taking a number of difficult but decisive actions today for our future, and what amounts to a significant restructuring across the company. The Post said in a statement, these steps are designed to strengthen our footing and sharpen our focus on delivering the distinctive journalism that sets the Post apart. This is the thing. If that was the case, you would not need to do this. The fact is, it is not distinctive journalism. You have been slop journalists pushing agendas and ideologies. Most importantly, engages our customers. All departments impacted. News outlets have struggled for years to maintain a sustainable business model after the internet upended the economics of journalism. Wait a second. So what you're saying is people will just do it for free? That's amazing. They'll just report on information and have conversations. Wild. And they'll be supported by their viewers, and the cream will rise to the top for the people that are doing it the best. Like, I don't know. Almost like survival of the fittest. All departments are impacted. Politics and government will remain our largest desk. Well, that's not great. And will remain central to our engagement and subscriber growth. Well, again, I feel like they are not fixing the reason why there's a problem there, if this is what they're saying right now. We will be closing the sports department in its current form. Wow. The Washington Post last year made changes across several business functions and announced job cuts, saying then that the reductions would not impact its newsroom. The newspaper, owned by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, had offered voluntary separation packages to employees across all functions in 2023 amid losses of $100 million. And on top of that, this is last week, it got leaked from an accidental email that got sent out by HR for Amazon, where they're having massive layoffs at Amazon.com as well. Quote, If Jeff Bezos is no longer willing to invest in the mission that has defined this paper for generations and served the millions who depend on Post journalism, then the Post deserves a steward that will, the Washington Post Guild said on X. The Post White House staff said in a letter to Bezos last week that their most impactful coverage depends heavily on collaboration with teams at risk of job cuts, and that a diversified newsroom is essential when the paper faces financial challenges. Bezos said in 2013, when he bought the newspaper, that he would preserve its journalistic tradition and would not lead its day-to-day operations. But there will, of course, be change over the coming years, he said. In recent years, the Post has clashed with some of its journalists who have openly criticized Bezos after the newspaper decided not to endorse a candidate in the November 2024 U.S. presidential election, leading to more than 200,000 people canceling their digital subscriptions. When you have an open revolt from the people working at your company that are facing your customers, there's going to be problems because they're going to basically tell their customers to not support their own company they're working at. Jeff Bezos is not going to be out of a job. You will be. The newspaper, which appointed William Lewis as its CEO in early 2024, also revamped its opinion section last year, shifting focus on personal liberties and free markets. Bezos was among the several tech executives seen as making overtures to U.S. President Donald Trump last year. He was seated prominently at Trump's inauguration, underscoring his shifting ties. Now we see why this came out. Man, the Orange Man Bad syndrome really does penetrate all journos. It's wild. Trump, who was a frequent critic of Bezos during his first term over what the Republican president deemed unfair coverage by the Post, praised the tech billionaire in March last year, saying Bezos was doing a real good job with his publication. Quote, today's layoffs at the Washington Post are a devastating setback for the scores of individual journalists affected and for the journalism profession, said National Press Club president. What are these made up companies and clubs? National Press Club? That guy probably makes like $1.8 million a year, and you wonder why it's all collapsing. The transgressions of the Washington Post here. This is Steve Malloy. Contrary to what former Washington Post editor Marty Barron just told Kaylin Collins, the Washington Post has never been an independent newspaper. Below is the Post's editorial page on the first day of publication on December 6, 1877. The Post was established to promote the Democrat Party, from which it has never wavered. The Post will aim to be a thoroughgoing newspaper, always abreast of the times. It will be democratic in politics and modern in style. The Democratic Party controls 25 of the most important states of the Union today and is in the position to prevent bad legislation. Even back in 1877, they were using these words. Bad, better. What does it all mean? It's if it disagrees with my ideology, it's bad. This is amazing. Holy. How about this one? Let's talk about more modern stuff. David Gertzman, Washington Post in October 2023. Headline was false and current. Notice any differences? 2023. Strike on Gaza hospital kills hundreds. Palestinian officials say as Biden departs for Israel visit. Update. Hundreds of Iranian protesters feared killed. U.S. considered military strikes. Those are two completely different headlines. Holy crap. That's wild. Retard fighter. Washington Post headline. Fired at driver as the vehicle veered past him. Here we go. Video shows ICE agent in Minneapolis fired at driver as vehicle veered past him. This is the same stuff I always talk about with how the lefty lunatics just formulate a completely different thing that happened. And then the word wizards write, this is the story. We need to warp what actually happened into fitting a narrative to push an agenda against why we hate what's happening right now. Every single time. White House press secretary slams Washington Post for their headline. The mysterious drop in fentanyl seizures on the U.S.-Mexico border. Here we go.
Washington Post just ran one of the most ridiculous headlines ever, even by their standards. And on my very first briefing several months ago, I said I would hold anyone accountable in this room. The Washington Post actually had this headline: the mysterious drop in fentanyl seizures on the US-Mexico border. How is this mysterious? There is no mystery about why there is a decrease in fentanyl coming into the United States. This administration's strong border policies are the reason there has been a decrease in fentanyl trafficking.
Anything but giving Trump credit. It's wild. A mysterious drop.
His strengthened relationship with Mexican President Sheinbaum and all of the measures he has been taking to deter illegal human and drug trafficking at our United States southern border is the reason for plummeting fentanyl seizures at the US border. There is nothing mysterious about that, and we'd like to see the Washington Post update their headline accordingly.
Wow.
This is clearly trying to intentionally manipulate the minds of the Americans, and I think the American people understand why there's been a fentanyl drop. In our office responded to this inquiry. We provided a whole host of the reasons that fentanyl seizures at the southern border have dropped, and the Washington Post refused to run them.
Wow. And you wonder why the layoffs happen here. Is L. Reynolds Pernell? This is a headline the Washington Post chose to describe the arrest of a man who allegedly brought a Molotov cocktail and other explosives to St. Matthew's Cathedral. You don't hate the media enough. Demonstrator arrested outside Red Mass for Judiciary, Supreme Court. Again, you can't hate journals enough. This is insane. The stories, and this is just like literally took me like a minute to put these together. There were so many. I could have kept going. This could be like an hour long. The Washington Post is a joke. It's been a joke for as long as I can remember. Maybe at some point it had some sort of integrity, but as of right now, it is a mess. And it's all one big club behind the scenes with these journals who have an agenda to push. They don't care about getting the truth or honest story out there. They care about pushing the agenda to get their politics in play. And everything else falls by the wayside. And I got to be honest, it might not be directly correlating to communism, but I'm seeing a lot of similarities. And that's what really scares me about it. But yeah, that is the Washington Post in a nutshell, burying the lead and losing 1/3 of their workforce currently. Once again, though, as we always say, fries in the bag.